Hey, good morning, Divine Ones. At least it's still morning here where I am in the Midwest of the United States. I'm not sure what time it may be. I know several of you are all around the world, so hopefully, wherever you are, you're able to tune in to this live Facebook video. I am combining two questions today that I received. One question that I received is what is life force energy? So, you all have heard me talk a lot about life force energy and why it's important and why taking care of your life force energy is a huge part of loving yourself, the practice of loving yourself. And then I also got a question a few weeks ago about, in response to a post it was a question I got in response to a post I posted here on my Facebook page a few weeks ago, which talked about the importance of having boundaries when you're trying to heal yourself, especially radical boundaries, meaning probably more boundaries than you're comfortable with. And someone asked me a question about why that's important, like why we need to be boundaried, and if boundaries are actually pushing people away from us instead of bringing them closer to us. So I want to address those because they actually relate to each other. Life force energy and boundaries actually go kind of hand in hand a little bit. So I wanted to address them together today in this video. So the first question really is, what is life force energy? So life force energy, in many different cultures, has different words, and since we don't really recognize it in the West, particularly like in the United States or in Western cultures, there's not actually a word for it. So we have to kind of put three words together to try to describe it, like life force and energy. But other cultures actually have a word for it. In some Asian cultures, they call it prana or chi. But it's literally what life force energy is. It's literally the energy of your soul. It's God energy, if you will. It's your tether. It's the energy that tethers you to the spiritual, right? The non-physical realm. And all of us have it. All of us are made of it. It's what literally creates the world, and it's what sustains the health of your body. And we need life force energy. We need it to be able to pour through us. So it comes through us. Where this body of ours is like a channel, or almost like a spout, if you will, like a water spout. And if life force energy is the water, this physical body is the spout, and we need that water to be flowing through us in order for our bodies to stay healthy and to stay well. As a matter of fact, life force energy, again, is the energy of your soul. We need that energy to be pouring through us in order to survive. It's the literal energy that gives us life, and it's the literal energy that keeps our body healthy. And so if there's a continuous flow and a large flow of life force energy coming through us, and charging through our being, then we're healthy. We're able to manifest what we want. We're able to easily, also, by the way, we're not having to force or struggle or push. The more life force that's flowing through us, unimpededly or without resistance, the easier things manifest for us, the easier our dreams manifest, our desires manifest, and the healthier our bodies stay. But if there's a lot of resistance to the flow of energy in our bodies, then we begin to be depleted of life force energy. We begin to be, some people will call it drained of life force energy. And that has negative effects, not just to our lives, right? That keeps us from being able to manifest the stuff that we really want. It keeps our lives from working well and working at their best. But it also, the more we deplete ourselves of life force energy, the more ill our bodies will become. Whenever I'm working with someone who has an illness or a disease, especially if it's a chronic illness or disease, the main cause of that is always a depletion in their life force energy somehow. And I'll talk a little bit about what charges it through, what charges life force through us, and what depletes us from us. But the main reason why we get sick, especially why we develop chronic illness and disease, is because we have been living lives, chronic lives, that drain our life force energy. Excuse me, that deplete our life force energy. Excuse me. I thought I was going to sneeze there for a minute. So It's the energy of our, again, it's the energy of our soul. And what is the soul's energy, right? So for those of us who have had near-death experiences, or those of us who, if you're in tune with your intuitive gifts, then you can feel into the soul's energy. You can literally feel it in your own body, in your own vibration. The soul's energy is love. It's literally love. It's not just what we've been taught of love as being like affection. It's not just that type of love. It's freedom, it's well-being, it's respect, it's joy, it's appreciation, it's acceptance, it's the feeling of being held and at ease. All of that is the soul's energy. It's like a conglomerate of that. It's like the love is a multifaceted vibration. It has all of those energies or feelings within it. And that's literally the energy of the soul. It's the highest frequency you can get. So you hear a lot of people talking in spiritual fields, and in metaphysical and new age fields. You hear a lot about raising your vibration. Well, really, the thing that your soul's vibration is the highest vibration you can get to. So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to bring more life force energy into your body, because that's what raises your vibration. You can drink all the green juice you want. You can go for all the walks in nature. You can meditate, you can make all the vision boards, you can do all of that. But if you're living a life that depletes your life force energy in other ways, you're not going to have a high vibration. You're just not. So the more life force energy you have in your body, the higher your vibration is going to be. And the higher your vibration is, the better things you're going to be able to manifest, and the healthier your body is going to be. So that's life force energy. It is the literal determinant for the health of your body. And it literally decides the health of your life. Like, the more life force energy you have, the higher your vibration is, the better you manifest, and the better your body is going to be healthy, because the body was literally created to house life force energy, which your body was created to house the energy of your soul. And if you are living in any type of way that like if you're holding shame about yourself, or you think something's wrong with you, or you have a lot of fear, or you're stressed a lot, or you're overwhelmed, those type of things deplete the life force energy from you. And you cannot continue those things. You cannot continue to feel ashamed about yourself. You can't continue to hold fear within your body. You can't continue to be stressed. And you can't continue to be overwhelmed and be doing things you don't want to do. This is another thing as well that drains the life force energy. Doing things you don't want to do. Right? Doing things that don't bring you passion and joy, that frustrate you or stress you. You can't continue to do those type of things and it not have a negative effect on your health, because it literally drains or depletes you from life force energy. It's the same thing when people talk about the chakras. The chakras, and I'll do another video on this at another point or time, or maybe a whole class series, because there's a lot I was shown in my own experience and working with my own guides about the chakras that's not very commonly talked about. But what the chakras literally are they're the points along the body in which your soul's energy pours through you. Right? So if you have 7 chakras, and people call them portals, they're kind of like that, like faucets, right? And so if you think of a faucet kind of like an opening like this, and the soul's energy pours through that faucet into your life, into the world. It pours through you, and that's how things become manifested, and that's how your body stays well. When you start to have belief systems that disconnect you from the truth of your soul, and behaviors that stress you out, or that cause you to not have joy in your life, or not feel loved, or something like that, you begin to close those chakras down. It's kind of like turning the faucet kind of off a little bit. So you close those chakras down, so that depletes the amount of life force energy that can flow through that area. So that's what life force energy is for a little bit here. It is literally the energy of the soul. It is the energy of love, and you need it. You need it to survive, right? You need it to actually live. So the less and less and less life force energy that you have that's charging it through you, the less you're going to be alive. You're going to start you start the process of dying, which is you just start the process of exiting the physical plane and returning to the physical plane. Now, what charges life force energy through us? What charges life force energy through us is pretty much everything related to joy and love. Everything that makes you feel supported, everything that makes you feel appreciated and accepted, everything that makes you feel held and respected, right? Everything that your passions, like doing your passions, doing work you're passionate about, having fun, having a life that pleases you, right? Those type of things charge the life force energy through you, like saying what you really want to say and allowing yourself to be yourself instead of suppressing yourself in some type of way. That allows the energy of the soul to pour through you, and it actually charges more of it through you. What drains it? Stress, fear, shame, doing things you don't want to do, right? Those things actually will deplete you of life force energy. And again, you cannot have a habit of doing those type of things. You cannot have a habit of being ashamed or being afraid or being stressed or doing things you don't want to do. You cannot have a habit of that and have a high life force energy. You can't, because it depletes you. And if you continue to do that, your body is going to reflect that, and it's only reflecting the amount of life force energy. It's kind of like the gas in a car, right? Your car runs best when the gas is full. When you start to deplete the car down and it's running on E, it begins to damage your car. And if you continue to run your gas on E, the car's going to stop. And that's kind of the exact same thing really with the body. So that's a little bit of life force energy. And why life force energy relates to boundaries is having clear, communicated, and honored boundaries protects your life force energy. Boundaries are not like what we do to try and control other people. Boundaries is not about controlling other people or pushing other people away. Boundaries is about clearly communicating to people what you need to have your life force energy protected, right? So it's about communicating to people what bothers you, what's not acceptable to you, what is acceptable to you, and how you will not accept things that continue to bother you and that aren't acceptable to you. Because when things continue to bother, if things are being done to you that bother you, and there is no way of you rectifying that, or because if it's bothering you, then it bothers you energetically. You'll feel disrespected, you'll feel dishonored, you'll feel drained or depleted some type of way. And that is literally draining life force energy from your body. It literally is draining life force energy from you. So anytime you feel dishonored, you feel disrespected, it's literally a sign that what's happening in what just happened or what's happening in this experience is something that bothers you, and you need to set a boundary around it. Boundaries are literally protection devices for how you want to show up in the world, and protection for your life force energy, and they're ways of teaching people how to treat you. How to treat you well, pretty much. Not just treat you, but treat you well in a way that works well for you, in a way that allows you to show up for them because when your boundaries are continually crossed, when people are disrespecting your boundaries, you start to resent them. You start to not want to be around them. You start to hold, like, even if you don't express your resentment, you will hold your resentment. And again, that's continuing to poison you even further, right? So boundaries are viably important, especially when you have an illness that you're trying to heal from. When you have an illness that you're trying to heal from, your life force energy is already low. And your healing journey is going to require you to bring more life force energy in your body and stop everything that's depleting you. And that's why you have to have, and one of the main reasons probably why the illness is there is because you probably have somewhere in your life where your boundaries have been crossed consistently, and they've not been honored. Whether you've not communicated what your boundary is to other people, or whether you've communicated it and they've just continued to dishonor or disrespect that boundary. And so now there needs to be a consequence, right? So when you're trying to heal yourself, again, remember, life force energy is the determining factor for the health of your body. So if you're ill, if you're not well, that's just a signal that your life force energy is low and you need to charge it up back. And in order to charge your energy, you have to have boundaries so that you're not being drained or depleted anymore. I'll give you an example from something that was happening in my life along my healing journey. It was very small, but I have many, many, many examples, and I'll be sharing other videos about what I learned about boundaries and some of the experience that taught me about how to set them, and the miraculous medicine that is having clear, honored boundaries. But one of the this is a very simple experience that taught me a big lesson about boundaries was when growing up in my adulthood, I used to I really became aware that I didn't like to wear shoes in my house. And I didn't like shoes to be worn in my house. I began to really feel like my house was a sacred space, and that I wanted the energy to be clean in my house. And so I didn't want any dirt in my house, to be tracked in my house by my feet, especially by anybody else's feet. So I would always take my shoes off before I came in my house, and I would always, walk barefoot or in my socks. And hey Leslie and hey Lori, thank you all for joining. So I would always walk barefoot in my house, but my family members, some of my family members, when they would come over, they would never take their shoes off. And initially I would ask them could you take your shoes off? And they would say, oh, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like I don't have any clean socks on, or I don't feel like going through that. That's too much. And so they would walk on my floors, and I had hardwood floors, and sometimes they would scuff my floors up. When they walked, especially if they had on like heels, they would scuff my floors up. And even if they didn't have heels on and they scuffed my floors up, I would feel disrespected. I always felt disrespected by it, because this was important to me. It wasn't just something frivolous to me. It was really something important for how I live my life. I wanted my energy in my home to be very clean. And if people close to me know, the energy in my home is very important to me. I keep my house clean. I keep everything in order. The energy in my house is important, and it really affects my well-being. So I always felt highly disrespected by this, but I never said anything. And what I noticed sometimes when those family members would come over, my body would start to get sick. My stomach would be queasy or something like that. And when I really started to learn about boundaries and how this was just one little simple thing, this was important to me. Not wearing shoes in my house was important to me. And people dishonoring that made me feel resentful, and it made me feel dishonored. So that was draining my life force energy. Just that small thing was draining my life force energy, which is why my body was getting sick when people would come over and do that. So what I did was I said again, I was very clear to people, please don't wear shoes in my house. This is why. This is important to me. This is why it's important to me. And here's the consequence. If you cannot take your shoes off when you come to my house, then you cannot either come to my house, or we have to interact outside of my house, like on my patio or something like that. And just to make it easier for people, I have this whole basket of new socks that I bought. And I don't wear the socks. They are brand new socks. And if somebody comes over and they don't have socks and they want to come to my house and they don't have socks, and they don't want to wear their bare feet in my house, I give them a fresh pair of socks to wear. So that was an option. And when I began to do that, and when my family began to honor that, they honored that once I clearly communicated that this is important to me, and that disrespect of this will not be accepted anymore by me, because this is the consequence. If you cannot respect it, then you can't either come over, or you have to interact with me outside of my house. So when I did that, I began to feel so much more peace in my home. The resentment I was feeling around that or to those family members was gone. And love, like we began to experience more love. And see, this is a very important thing to understand. Love can only exist in spaces where you feel honored and respected. If you do not feel honored and respected in a space, whether that space is a relationship, whether it's an organization, whether it's a job, whether it's an event, whatever it is, if you feel disrespected or dishonored, you will not feel the energy of love in that space. You will not feel the frequency of it. You will be disconnected from it in somehow. Boundaries, where you have clear communicated boundaries of what's important to you, what's not acceptable to you, and what the consequence may be for dishonoring that. What that does is it begins to allow love to flow freely in that relationship, because nobody's dishonoring or disrespecting somebody, even if they're not intending to do it. Right? Boundaries is not saying you're intentionally trying to hurt me, because a lot of times people do things because they don't know. This is why you have to communicate your boundaries. You have to clearly communicate them. People didn't know why taking their shoes off in my home was so important to me, and that it was very important to me. They didn't know that until I communicated it. Right? So that's why you have to clearly communicate your boundaries. And when you're trying to heal yourself, you have got to be very clear first with yourself about what's really important to you. What's important to you? What's not okay with you? What bothers you? What troubles you that people are doing or whatever? You've got to get very clear about that. And then you have to communicate that with the people in your lives so that, one, they know. Because again, a lot of times people may be doing something that they're just not aware of bothers you. So once you really communicate that, and then you communicate that, hey, this is important to me. Please don't do this anymore. And if you do continue to do this, this may be the consequence. The consequence does not necessarily have to be that you completely end the relationship with them. It just may be that you don't spend as much time with them, or you can't talk on the phone with them, or you can't spend time in the space with them. Whatever that is. But what you're doing is you are protecting your life force energy when you set boundaries. It's not about controlling people. It's about giving yourself what you need to be well, and teaching other people and communicating with people how to treat you, so that not only you are well, but so that you can exchange the energy of love between the two of you. Boundaries are highly important. You cannot heal yourself without them, because if you don't have boundaries when you're trying to heal, people are going to continue to cross them, and you're going to continue to feel disempowered. You're going to feel resentful, and you're going to feel disrespected, and those three energies continue to drain your life force energy even more. And if you are experiencing some type of illness or disease, you need a charge. You need your life force energy to increase in your body in order to heal yourself, not decrease. So this is why boundaries and being radically boundaried, and why I call it radically boundaried, is because when you're trying to heal yourself, you're probably going to have to begin to set more boundaries than you ever did before, because you probably were not used to it, which most of us were not taught. We weren't taught, especially in the West. A lot of us were not taught growing up how to really set boundaries, the importance of boundaries, how to communicate what's not okay with us, and what is okay with us. We weren't really taught how to do that. Even in our institutions and our systems, if an adult is talking to you, think about how we teach kids. If one of their family members wants to give them a kiss or wants to engage with that child, and that child is not in the mood or doesn't feel like it in the moment, a lot of times we'll say, don't be like that. Don't be so rude. Give grandfather or uncle or auntie or cousin or whatever a kiss, or go hug them or something. And that's teaching the child to not honor their own boundaries. The child did not want to do that right then. That was not something that was okay for them in that moment. And we teach them a lot of times to dishonor. So a lot of us have been taught in many different ways. That's just one example. But in many different ways in our childhood, to dishonor our boundaries, really to be a doormat, to not have any boundaries and let people just cross over us. And that's why so many of us have so many resentments. That's why so many of us feel disempowered. And that's why so many of us move through our lives feeling disrespected. It's because we don't have clear-cut, communicated boundaries. When you do, you feel empowered, you feel honored, you're more able to show up in that relationship with whoever that is, with a feeling of love and respect, and you keep your life force energy charged. So boundaries are very important, and they're a very big part of loving yourself. They're a huge part of loving yourself, because boundaries keep harm from being done to you. A big part of loving yourself is do no harm to yourself. And if you don't have boundaries, then you're allowing harm to come to yourself. You're harming yourself because you're allowing people to keep doing the things that bother you, that aren't okay with you, that aren't acceptable for you. And a lot of us, again, you were taught to be nice, or you were taught to just, to let things go. And that is going, and I just want to shine a bigger light against that, because what that actually is doing is it's teaching you, one, to not listen to your inner guidance about what's important to you, and it's making your life force energy drained. So you're not listening to the divine guidance within you that says, hey, this is not okay. And then when you don't, life force energy gets drained from you. And if that continues, if you begin to have a habit of that, you're going to be sick. You're going to be sick, not because your body's betraying you, not because you did something wrong, but just because you've been depleting yourself of the energy that your very body needs to stay healthy. And that's your soul's energy. That's love energy. Again, because that's what the soul actually is. The soul is love. And so you need the energy of love in your body every day at a high level to stay healthy and to manifest the type of life that you want. Boundaries help you do that. Again, boundaries. What's important to you? What's acceptable and not acceptable to you? And communicate that to the people in your lives, especially if something's happened that made you become clear about, oh, this is something that's important to me. Because a lot of times you don't even realize something's important to you until it's been crossed, it's been dishonored, it's been disrespected. And then you have a feeling and like, why am I feeling upset about this? Why am I angry about this? Oh, because I'm angry because actually not wearing shoes in my house is a big deal for me. So I need to actually honor that, and I need to communicate that to the people in my life and communicate it and make sure this is honored. And when I do, I feel more empowered. I feel respected. I feel loved. And now I can fully extend that to other people. But anytime you feel disrespected and dishonored in space, you can't extend love to them. You won't, because you can only give energetically to somebody what you have for yourself. And so if you're feeling disrespected and dishonored, what you're probably going to give, the energy you're going to give to somebody else is resentment. So that's why it's important. This is why it's really important to have boundaries when you're trying to heal yourself, because boundaries help you charge your life force energy. It helps you protect your life force energy so that it's not drained and it's not depleted by something that makes you feel dishonored or disrespected. And life force energy is crucially important because it is literally the energy of the soul. And there are many different scientific studies that have been happening, by the way, that have been able to measure this. They have been able to measure this, they've been doing this especially in other countries where this has been part of the culture, of the cultural understanding for years. And they've been measuring chi and prana for years. There are studies that have shown that when a person transitions, that they have seen the chi or the prana leave the body. This is all of other cultures are understanding this more and more. The West is just now really starting to understand what it is. And this is why we're calling it life force energy. So I call it life force energy. You'll also probably hear me call it soul energy or love energy. They're all the same things. Life force energy, soul energy, love energy, just three different ways to say the same things. We don't actually have just one word in the West to define it right now. But the word we're using collectively in the West is life force energy. But again, it's the energy of your soul. It's the energy of God. It is the literal energy of love. You need it to survive. It's literally not just a cute quote or slogan that you are made from love, you are made of love, and you need love to live. This is literally the truth of your being. It's not a cute philosophy. It's not a cute slogan. It is literally the truth of life. Love gives you life. Love sustains your life. Love keeps your body healthy. And you need a continual source of it to be charged through you to survive. And in order to do that, you got to have boundaries and you got to do things that charge it through you. So before I go, I'm going to see if you all have any questions. I see some of you all are saying this is awesome. Thank you all. I'm so glad you all are enjoying this. Travis says, boundaries protect you from other people's expectations of you that you're aware of and unaware of. The hardest lesson I learned so far in life. So yeah, so it's really not even about, I mean, it may protect you from their expectations and all of that, but it's really about you teaching other people how to treat you. First, being aware of how you need to be treated. That's number one. Get very aware of what charges you and what drains you, right? What drains you, what bothers you, what upsets you, what like for a simple thing is when I used to do a lot of relationship coaching when I would work with couples, this is something I would see a lot. You know, one person wouldn't wash their dishes, right? They would eat, wouldn't wash their dishes, and the other person wouldn't say anything about it. They would just wash the dishes, but they were fuming inside. And they were fuming inside because they felt disrespected and dishonored, that the other person wasn't taking care of their responsibilities. Now, the other person might not have even known that this was so important to that person because the person never spoke up about it. They always were like, well, it's okay. Oh, well, they'll do it better next time. Or eventually they'll get it. And this is what happens with us. We need to speak up about what bothers us when it bothers us in the moment. This is another thing about boundaries. Don't wait till 6 months down the road to speak up about something. Speak up about it when you become aware that it bothers you. Right? So one of the things I used to do with people with relationships that really helped more love flow in those relationships is help people get really clear about their boundaries and communicate those boundaries to their partner, because that helps their partner love them, learn how to love them and treat them better. And so that love flows back and forth between the two of them instead of one person flowing love and the other person flowing resentment. So that's just, you know, there's a whole class series that I may do in 2019 about boundaries because it's very important. There's a lot to it. But just for the sake of this video, when you are wanting to heal yourself, especially if you have some type of illness or disease, especially if it's chronic, it is time to get radically boundaried. It is time to get crystal clear with everybody in your life around what you need, what's not acceptable to you, what's not okay, and what the consequences are. Because there has to be consequences, because you can communicate something's not okay with you, and if that person continues to do that and there's no consequence, then you're going to continue to feel disrespectful and they're going to continue to do that. So there has to be a consequence, and you have to honor that consequence. So I was really going back to my own example before I closed. I was ready, and I did hold a consequence to some of my family members for those who weren't willing to take their shoes off when they came to my home. They didn't get to come inside. If they were not going to do it, they did not come inside. They did not. And there were family members that came over that had to leave because they were not willing to do that. Right? And so that may have been uncomfortable in the moment, but it kept me feeling respected. And eventually they understood that this was important to me, and they began to comply to that. And we have a wonderful relationship now. There's no resentment on either person's terms. So just know that boundaries keep your life force energy charged, and life force energy, excuse me, there's that sneeze finally. Life force energy is important to the well-being of your life and the wellness of your body. Until next time, you all, I'm so glad you all tuned in. Please share this video with anybody you know that may need it or may benefit from it. And keep a lookout. I got some good stuff coming up this later on this week. I love all of you all's questions. If you posted a question and I didn't see it during this video, I'll try to add it to the list and answer it in a future video. Until next time, much love, and know that whatever you want, whatever healing you desire or transformation you crave or manifestation you want, the way to get it is to love yourself. Self-love is always the way there. Bye.